All right, Dub Nation, I promise you today, no Kevin Durant talk. We're going to talk Warriors, and we're going to talk about some of their new draft picks and just the team in general. I'm going to be joined today by one of the brightest minds in basketball. I respect her tremendously. She seems to always be correct. No pressure, Kristen, but you are. You're one of the brightest minds I know in this sport, in this industry, and I'm excited to talk Warriors basketball with Kristen Peek next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's show is brought to you by our longtime sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You can follow Kristen Peek on Twitter at Kristen Peek. Very easy. She covers more on the younger side of basketball, whether it's college, whether it's high school, all the players that eventually end up to the NBA go through various ranks, and Kristen Peek covers it for various publications, Yahoo Sports, I believe Rivals. Who am I missing here, Kristen? Who else do you work for that we want to give them love real quick as we start the show?
That's it. Yahoo owns Rivals, so
there you go.
employer is Yahoo Sports, but Rivals is the brand. Yes.
There you go. So, Kristen, it's been a year or two since we've talked. I've had you on my other podcast, the Rick Barry Show, before. But it's such a pleasure to have you on. I tell people this all the time, and I mean it. I don't mean to put pressure on you saying this, but you know basketball. Like I've always said that if any NBA organization decides to put nepotism aside, decides to put favoritism aside, and focus strictly on intelligence, on knowledge, they would hire you as their GM. And maybe someday this still will happen. I hope so. But for now, you cover the younger side of things. The Golden State Warriors had a very interesting draft. That might be the best way to describe it. First of all, how are you doing? I'm sorry, I don't mean to just start talking all this. What's going on with you? How's life? How are you?
Oh my gosh, the draft feels like it was 15 years ago, just in terms of like that time frame. I know we spoke. It's like I felt like I was doing 30 or whatever radio hits every single day leading up to the draft. And by the time the draft came, I even said, I said to Paolo Banchero when he came through on draft night, because I interview all the players after they get drafted. And I said to him, I was like, I'm so proud of you, but also I am so sick of talking about you to everyone. And that's just the name of the game, right? Like and then he counted with like, I don't think there's anybody in this entire arena that has seen me play more basketball games than you have. And it's true, because I've known the kid since he was 14, 15 years old. So it's my favorite night of the week, but leading up to it is super stressful. And you're right, the Warriors, they're coming off the championship. They didn't really need to add anyone. So they kind of did the high risk, high reward and Patrick Baldwin Jr. I mean, this is a guy who he passes the eye test. You know, I know you said we're not going to talk about Kevin Durant, but he kind of has that frame and he has that.
Talk about him.
That
you can talk about him. I'm gonna hold back.
Like you say, you're like, we're not talking about Kevin Durant, and people that can see my background, it's like, oh, here's a picture of me and Kevin and his dad.
Talk about him. It's just, I think people are tired of me talking about him. So if you want to talk about him, all you, please. Okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
No, but sorry to sidetrack that, but. With Pat Baldwin, I mean, the way he shoots the three with his length, I think he's about 6'10", is very eerily similar to Kevin Durant with his frame, his slight frame. But he's plagued with injuries. So there's going to be that kind of downtime. I mean, hello, James Wiseman. We're still waiting to see him on the court. But the Warriors have that, I guess, that cushion to be able to swing for the fences on Patrick Baldwin, see if he ends up developing into what his ceiling can be. And if not, I mean, you guys are coming off the championship and still have the two best shooters in the NBA.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt when you have that, right? The Splash Brothers. A couple years ago, I can't remember. We've talked a few times on Me and the Media, but I think the first time I interviewed you, you said that the Warriors should have drafted LaMelo Ball.
Yes, they should have.
That was very prescient. I mean, you nailed that. But the Warriors went with James Wiseman. And as you just alluded to a moment ago, it's now going to be year 3 for him. We haven't seen much. I guess let's just start with Wiseman, because this is a player who the Warriors expected last year to start playing some significant minutes, but he had that knee injury. And from what I've heard and from hints and whatnot, he probably could have played at the end of the season, but I think the Warriors prefer just letting him sit and kind of getting a mental restart, fresh beginnings. It's year 3 now. What are your thoughts on James Wiseman? What do you think we're going to see here? Is this going to be like a make or break? Does he have the luxury of developing still? Your thoughts on James Wiseman, please.
I don't know how much we're going to see him at the NBA level because, this is a guy that really hasn't played a competitive basketball game in almost 3 years. We have to remember he only played 3 games at Memphis before leaving the school because of recruiting violations. So he had all that time off and then has this meniscus injury, which I don't really buy that it was a meniscus injury anymore because I've torn my meniscus and it was only like at most a 3 or 4 month recovery. But now we got James Wiseman going over to England to get stem cell work done.
Did he do that?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Wait, James Wiseman went to England to get stem cell, like kind of like a transfusion kind of thing?
Yes, he did during the season. He did. So I think we're more because the Warriors, again, have that, just cushion for they don't need him on the court right away. We're going to see him more in G League situations, maybe coming up a game or two to kind of help with load management with other players. But I think the pressure is starting to mount on Wiseman a little bit. I mean, you can kind of forgive the year 1, year 2 injuries, but you don't want to go into season 3, season 4, still not making a substantial impact on a team that drafted you with the number 2 pick, because then we're going into Markelle Fultz territory. We're going, down that road of high draft picks and very little production.
Oh, yeah, we are entering that level. I agree with you about the meniscus. Rick Barry was saying the exact same thing that, he saw. I know there's a lot of different variances to the injury and, but you're right. For the amount of time he missed, it seemed, as the kids like to say, sus. And so I guess we'll find out this season what happens, because chances are it's all indications are that the Warriors are going to be playing him for, 25 minutes a game, probably. Best case scenario, what do you see with James Wiseman? I mean, best case for me is that this kid could still end up being like an all-star caliber player. I mean, the size is something you can't replace. He does have a nice shooting stroke. He spaces the floor as a result of that. He can actually bring the ball up the court. He covers the court with his strides so fast. I mean, he talk about covering distance. Best case scenario, what do you see with James Wiseman? And on that note, also worst case, because it could also go that route and there might be a colossal disappointment there.
I mean, best case scenario, we got to remember, yes, he's been in the league. This is his 3rd season, but he's still young. These kids are now drafted at 19 years old. Yep. So if you're 21 years old and you're just getting now into your first NBA season, I'm not throwing in the towel yet on him. I still think that he has a lot of productive years ahead of him. He just needs to put it all together. And it starts with this season. I don't think he can go another season suffering an injury and being sidelined, because then it starts to play with your psyche, and that it's a long road. 82 games is a long time. So you have to stay healthy. You have to stay on the court. And we have yet to see that from James on the college and pro level this far.
Yeah, I guess we're going to find out. I think there's a huge reason why the Warriors took all the stops out to re-sign Kevon Looney, because otherwise it was just going to be Wiseman, and he's so unproven. When we come back, we're gonna. I do want to delve into Patrick Bryant. Did I say
Baldwin?
Right? No.
Patrick Baldwin Jr.
Patrick Bryant, I think, was like the old former Warriors first round pick. I'm sorry, yeah, Patrick Baldwin Jr., PB&J. And then they also got other picks, like Ryan Rollins. I mean, the Warriors invested $2 million just to move up 7 places in the second round to get him. This is a team that's actually monitoring their spending, but they decided $2 million was worth it. So I want to pick your brain as much as possible. First, got to talk about a new sponsor. This is this is the read. I'm going to read this script. I haven't done this ad before. Fortunately, they gave me a straight up script, and I'm just going to read it verbatim. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. I shouldn't laugh. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Yeah, those are big deals. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe. Plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For your second listen, get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes every day with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA, your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes. You can follow Yahoo Sports' insider, analyst, NBA reporter, Kristen Peake, at Kristen Peake, one of the brightest minds in the game. And you can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. PB&J, Patrick Baldwin Jr. I'm sorry for it's not a Freudian slip, but it was definitely a mental error. Patrick Baldwin. No, St. Patrick Bryan. I'm sorry. I mean, he was a former center. Do you remember him, by the way? Like, does that ring a bell?
I don't know Patrick Thomas or Bryant. I know Thomas Bryant. He was a pretty high recruit. I don't know like the Warriors players though.
This was like back in the 2000s. So whatever.
Oh yeah.
But let's talk about PB&J, Patrick Baldwin Jr. His dad was a coach, so he's got some pedigree. Like you mentioned, he's 6'10". That shooting stroke, I think, alone could have sold the Warriors. Because look, best case scenario, you now have a 6'10" Klay Thompson. I think that's kind of like what you're seeing there. Give me your reaction, please, to like your first thoughts when the Warriors made that pick. Like, I imagine you were surprised. I was incessantly reviewing your mock drafts every time you revise those things, and I never once saw Patrick Baldwin Jr. on there. So, what was your reaction to that? And yeah, give us your thoughts on Patrick Baldwin Jr., the Warriors' first round pick in the 2022 draft.
I'll say this, Pat back in high school, I mean, he played alongside Jalen Johnson on his AAU team. Who else was on that team? It was like a loaded team, and Pat was the best one on the team, like when he was healthy. That is the key. When he's healthy, he is a high-level prospect. But he decided to go play at UW Milwaukee for his dad, like you mentioned, but they had nobody else on the team. So to see Pat try to take on that role and be the guy, and he wasn't the guy, it was very clear early in the season. And then he had his injury. He only played 11 games. So I think he would have really benefited from going to Kansas, where you're playing behind a more older established player in the front court, or off to the wing like Ochai Agbaji, who was the number 14 pick to Cleveland, or David McCormick, who was a senior down low. And he would have won a national championship. But he decided to go play for his dad. And, you never know going into the situation if it's going to be the right fit or the right decision. It's always after the fact we say, oh, he should have done this. But he was it was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Had a lot of blue blood offers, but again, decided to play for his dad. Only played 11 games. We saw glimpses of it, but then this is really, really what really upset me and a lot of people that cover the draft. To only play 11 games and then you have to prove yourself. That's what the draft combine is for. And he did participate in the measurements, but he didn't do any of the shooting drills. He didn't do any of the 5-on-5 scrimmages. A lot of players decided to sit out the 5-on-5 scrimmages. And he only participated in his pro day. And, there's always a strategy going into that. I don't think he had a promise at that point from the Warriors or any team in the first round, but I always get frustrated because I think these players, they lean into too much of what their agents are saying, and they're instead of like the actual NBA scouts and front office executives that are there rolling their eyes, knowing that like it's an 82-game season. And if you're ducking the competition at this stage at the draft combine, then how are you going to be able to, it's a random Tuesday and we're in your least favorite city in the world. How am I confident knowing that you're going to go out there and give 100% on the court?
Right.
So it's kind of this like weird balancing act that agents try to do with NBA personnel, but that was really frustrating for me. And that's when I was just like, all right, this guy's going to duck this competition. He's not a first rounder, but he is. And the Warriors took him as a swing for the fences. And I'm not mad about it because I've seen Pat healthy. And I think he's a hard worker. He's a nice kid. And he has he passes the eye test. You look at him, you're like, yes, you are a pro. You are an NBA player.
Right. What do you think do you think the injury alone was the reason for his poor shooting percentage from deep, his 1 year in Wisconsin? Because the shooting numbers were not great. I mean, the only thing really we're going on is the eye test, and the measurables do, outside of the physical measurables of his stature and so forth, nothing really indicates that he's going to be a great player. I imagine they're going to storm away mostly, and Santa Cruz is going to get a lot of G League minutes. Is this someone that you think at least at the G League can thrive? Or, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, in your personal opinion, I know this is going to be strictly an opinion because there's no way to predict this accurately, but you've seen a million players. You've been studying this game. You played this game. Is Patrick Baldwin Jr. 5 years from now going to be someone that we never hear from again? Or in your eyes, do you think he's going to be someday playing important minutes for the Warriors?
I think, the Warriors, they did their homework. And I think you kind of alluded to the point of maybe why they decided to pick him, because they saw how well he did play on Team USA growing up, on his AAU and high school team, where he had other great players around him. And then we saw the exact opposite of that in his 1 year in college, where, his shooting percentage was horrible, but he was also on a horrible team and felt like he had to be the guy and take every single shot. And when you're taking that many shots and not making a lot of them because the rest of your team isn't giving you the ball at the right time coming off the screen, or, you're making the bad read when the defender hedges when you should have passed, but you don't have confidence in your teammates. So you're putting up the shot anyways because you're 6'10" and you have a high release jump shot. Do you know what I mean? So it's all these little things where I think contribute to his low shooting percentage. But I mean, the Warriors scouting team, they must have seen something in him previous to that, either talking to the coaches from Team USA or his high school or AAU coaches, feeling confident that no, he's going to come in on the right situation. There's going to be zero pressure on him. And he does have the tools to be a good player alongside great players. Right.
And he's going to learn from the best. There's no doubt about that. In the second round, the Warriors had 2 picks, but the one that really stuck out is a player that I'm curious to know if you agree or not, but I think he's going to be seeing some heavy minutes this year. They're going to be playing him, and that's Ryan Rollins, who did have relative success at the college level, playing for a smaller program, I believe in Toledo. Correct me if I'm wrong there. What do you think about Ryan Rollins? Why do you think the Warriors spent the money to trade up? What do you see in him?
No, Ryan is he's I just talked about what I hate about the NBA draft combine. Now I'll tell you what I love about the NBA draft combine. And it's players like Ryan Rollins. It's players like Jalen Williams, who actually got himself a lottery pick and went number 12 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. These players from these non-Power 5 conferences that just shine on the stage of the NBA draft combine. And Ryan Rollins was one of the most impressive players during scrimmage on the first day. And to the point where I had maybe 3 or 4 teams texting me can you find out if Ryan Rollins has a promise, and see if he's going to play tomorrow. There was that much intrigue in him because they saw just in terms of how he reads the game so well, and especially on the NBA level, when it opens up the floor and the spacing, he's making those right reads. And it's basically the NBA game is a chess of pick and roll. And if you are a guard and you know how to read the pick and roll, and you have good size, and you can 9 times out of 10 make the right read off that play alone, then you're going to be successful. And I think that's what the Warriors saw in that, and why they wanted to trade up 7 spots to make sure that they got him.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you envision from him? Because I do think he's going to be playing. I don't think they drafted him just to develop him for a year or two. I think he's going to be playing. They do have a potential hole in the roster left behind from Gary Payton II. So is he that good defensively? How is his offensive game? Yeah, can you give us the scouting report from your perspective?
Yeah, defensively, I mean, I wouldn't call him he's not a Davion Mitchell off night lockdown defender, but he definitely he had success defensively at the college level. And you have to remember he's still young too. I think he came out his sophomore year, so a little older than the one and dones, but still has that like experience and that chip on his shoulder too. Because when you're not going to a blue belt program or even a Power 5 program, when you enter the league, you still there. You're still out to prove that you belong there. And sometimes that's some of the most dangerous players because they're there to prove something. I mean, hello, Ja Morant, even being number 2 pick in the draft, said he still goes out each and every year with something to prove because he wants to show people that like, no, I should have gone number 1. Like I am that point god, and not saying that Ryan is the same way, but he's going to enter the league with a chip on his shoulder and also just be a sponge. Like I talked to him at Summer League and he's more than thrilled with where he's landed at the Golden State Warriors. And he cannot wait just to like pick the brains offensively and defensively with Draymond, but offensively from Steph and Clay, 2 of the best guards in the league. So he's excited. I don't know what his role is going to be. It's obviously going to be a secondary role, but he's going to be, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. Similar to the way Bones Highland did in Denver last year. I can see that sort of, just like glimpses, like Bones wasn't a bona fide like, oh, wow, we know what we got here, but you saw glimpses of it and made you excited for the future.
Oh my God! If he can play like Bones Highland in his rookie year, I think the Warriors are ecstatic.
I'm not saying he's Bones Highland, but like in the sense where people aren't going to expect a lot from a player coming out of Toledo, just like Bones coming from VCU, a little undersized, the same way. So I think there's going to be glimpses, and people are going to be like, "Whoa, where did this guy come from?"
Oh man! If that happens, Dub Nation's going to be ecstatic. By the way, just real quick, the player I was confusing Patrick Baldwin Jr. with was Patrick O'Brien. Who was drafted in 2006, first round pick, a 7-footer out of Bradley University. So that's what I was confusing him with. I don't know if you remember him at all or not, but
nope, never heard of him.
That was a long time ago, and he did nothing for the Warriors. That was part of the dark ages. When we come back, we're going to wrap things up. I would love to get your insights, Kristen, on the 2 Warriors youngsters, besides James Wiseman, who they're going to be counting on a lot. And that's Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. First, though, we got to talk about a longtime sponsor of this program, BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews. You can find news of every league. Major League Baseball is in full swing. NFL is just around the corner. You can bet on preseason games. You degenerate bastards do. NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, golf. You can bet on LIV, PGA, you name it. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. Head to the BetOnline website today. That's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline is where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and YouTube. You can follow Kristen Peake, a brilliant basketball mind covering draft prospects, up-and-coming NBA players, and so forth for Yahoo Sports, Rivals.com. Again, at Kristen Peake is her Twitter handle. Real quick, one more draft pick I want to ask of your opinion, if you don't mind, and that's Guy Santos, who had some moments in summer league that were I thought maybe 2-3 years from now with that physique, if he develops some more, he could be a real player. Any thoughts on Guy Santos?
I have zero thoughts on Guy Santos. I hadn't even heard of him until I saw him up here the night of the draft. I'm sorry. I have nothing to say about him. You gave me the player that I like literally have no take on.
It's not a big deal because I don't think he's going to be relevant for at least a year, if not more. What about the 2 Warriors youngsters that their team is going to be clearly counting on now? Jonathan Kuminga, who I remember you were telling me you were very excited that he fell to the Warriors. It was a bit of a shock. I think the last time we talked, you referenced that it was his draft interviews kind of turned some teams off, and that's why he fell so far. And then Moses Moody, who fell to him at the 14th pick. I know the Warriors wanted Chris Duarte, who ended up with the Pacers a pick earlier, but Moses Moody is fantastic. I think he's more NBA ready. What are your thoughts on these 2 shining, bright young stars? And what do you see them doing here now in year 2? I was about to say year 3 or 4, but year 2, it's crazy. Yeah, your thoughts, please.
I love JK. I love Mo. I've known them for a very long time. We just need to reiterate that Jonathan Kuminga reclassified up, and then he went to play grown-ass men in the G League for his 1 year removed before entering the league. And this is a guy when after he was drafted, he felt like he was slighted more than any player. Like in his mind, he's the best player in this draft class. And so I think just like I talked about having that chip on his shoulder, like I think JK has that, and we see little glimpses of it because when it's personal. Some of those dunks are personal. Like he's trying to prove something. And I'm here for it. I have always loved the way he plays the game of basketball. I still don't think he knows how good he is because he's still so young. So you're going to get that physicality from him this year. He's stronger. He's more confident, more comfortable in his role, probably on the team than, last year. And because I talked to him halfway through the year, and he was frustrated with his minutes and just having to kind of be second fiddle, go back and forth between the G League. And he understands that it was for his development. And then once the playoffs hit, I mean, I think him and Mo just sat back and they're like, let's watch greatness win us the ring. Like there was,
he started 3 games.
I know.
That's crazy. Like at 19 years old, and he started 3 pivotal playoff games. It was crazy. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but early in the playoffs, he was like amazing. And then once the finals hit, I think him and Mo were just like, all right, let's sit back, let's watch this happen, and get a ring at the end of it before we're both 20 years old, which is crazy. Because you think of all the players that have always worked to get that NBA championship ring, and these two are doing it before they turn 20 years old. And then with Mo, I mean, here's a guy, and I saw that, oh my gosh, I was like bawling my eyes out when I saw this moment on television because his mom, I'm really close with. And so there was a moment, and you have to understand about Mo is he was playing at Mount Verde Academy alongside, you guys all know that, or everyone should know this by now, Kay Cunningham, #1 pick, Scotty Barnes, Rookie of the Year, Day'Ron Sharp, who I think he ended up being a 2nd round pick, but North Carolina commit. And Mo was kind of in their shadows a little bit. And so when it came time for all the big awards, like the McDonald's All-American, he was snubbed. He wasn't a McDonald's All-American. And I remember I saw his mom at a game, and she's like, he's taking it really hard. And I don't know what to say to him because he's kind of getting discouraged. And I was like, well, let me talk to him because, and I'll tell him the same thing I'm telling you. I said, you know who else wasn't a McDonald's All-American, but was a 1st round draft pick? Cam Thomas. Yeah, that's his. Yeah, who went to Brooklyn in the 1st round. He was a McDonald's All-American. He got snubbed. So you have to remember, like, just because you're not a McDonald's All-American doesn't mean that you're going to be an NBA player. Those two do not, like, if you're a McDonald's All, it's not automatic that you're going to be an NBA player. And so he really took that. He's like, no, I got something to prove. I'm going to prove something at Arkansas. I'm going to prove something. And he did. And he ended up being a lottery pick. So it's just one of those moments where it's like you have setback early in your career at a high school level, and now you're an NBA champion. And going into your 2nd year, a little more confident in your game and kind of have that like weight lifted off your shoulder. Like you already have a ring. You don't have anything else. Like, how many people say like, oh, I want to be an NBA champion. You guys did it in your 1st year. So that pressure's off. And I think both of them are going to thrive, to be honest. Mo's going to start shooting lights out. JK's going to get to the rim. It's him and Draymond, in the small ball lineup are going to be so much fun to watch.
Oh, and I had some concerns when the team lost Gary Payton II. Otto Porter Jr. was a little more expected, in my opinion, just because they weren't going to pay him real money. But the huge bright side of it is the fact that these 2 players are going to be seeing minutes now. What, in your opinion, what is the impact of a player that young and that promising going through a world championship run? The Warriors cannot emphasize enough the importance of it. Your thoughts on that?
Just being going through the experience, you mean? Yeah. I would just say it's a unique experience and an experience at that young. And I know both their phones were like blowing up afterwards from Gary.
Oh, it's okay. I'm a dog, dude. This is a dog-friendly show. Continue. It's okay.
I know.
Speaking
of Gary Payton, I've got my own Gary here at the house. Gary, no. But that experience going through an NBA run like that and seeing what it takes to actually win a ring from your teammates, there is nothing else that you can talk to people that have won championships, but seeing it and being a part of it and seeing how hard every night Steph and Klay and Draymond worked to get to that point, especially after the previous 2 seasons. I mean, you cannot even pay enough money to be able to experience that, and experience that at such a young age. Even if it doesn't work out for the Warriors, they're going to take that experience and that confidence to wherever their career takes them.
It's incredible. And for the Warriors to luck out the way they did, to struggle in a year that results in 2 lottery picks in what I think is arguably the deepest draft possibly ever. I mean,
yes.
And they get 2 lottery picks, and it's just incredible. It's mind-blowing. I want to leave on this note, and I know you got to run. I'd love to meet your dog someday. That's awesome. Tell people who are unfamiliar with your work who you are. How did you get to the position you are? You played college ball. And again, I'm sorry again if my compliments are ever too much, but we've spoken enough where I trust you. I trust everything you say about basketball. You are incredibly bright. How did you get to where you are, and what's your end game? Like what do you want to do? Like, is working for an NBA team and personnel a goal? Yeah, tell the world about you, please.
Well, thank you. I played Division II volleyball and basketball in college. I've always loved the game of basketball. You have to love it to be in the gym as much as I am. I mean, sitting at AAU games from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. And there's a reason why there's not a lot of females in this industry. And that's because you're always on the road, 1, so you have no social life, and 2, you're just in the gym constantly. But I tell young kids, young adults coming up that want to be in this business all the time. I said yes to every opportunity until the right amount of yeses became basketball. Like I covered financial news. I took a job in Australia. I was working for Yahoo Australia there. I covered MMA and boxing. I covered Super Bowls. I covered these are all great, but it's not basketball. So once I got into basketball, once you get into the area that you want to be in, then you have to outwork everyone. Yep. And so that's just kind of where I've gotten today. And I do think eventually I'll probably end up at an NBA team. But right now, being able to move around and not have restrictions and be able to talk to whoever I want, I'm way more valuable to an NBA team in terms of intel right now. But once that one and done rule is removed, as we're probably thinking for the 2025 high school draft class or high school class. So it'd be 2026 draft or 2025, I guess, if they don't have to go. Then I think NBA teams will start calling, because I'm telling you, I'm used to sitting in the gym at AU events on those horrible bleachers for hours on end, but these NBA scouts are not used to it. And I can't see them wanting to go down that road when there's people that are already there, in the grassroots space.
I love it, Kristen. Thank you. I hope to have you back on soon.
Yes, again, of course.
And I know you're busy, but you're just brilliant. Anyone watching this show today or listening to this show today, take every word she says to heart, because there is value there and it's incredibly insightful. Thank you so much, Kristen. And again, you can follow Kristen Peake on Twitter at Kristen Peake. Anything else you'd like to promote before we call it a wrap? So any new stories you're working on right now? Anything you want to plug?
I will say this. Next year's draft, there are going to be 4 non-college players in the top 5. It's going to be Victor Wembanyama out of France, who I'm actually going over to Europe to see very soon. It's going to be Scoot Henderson, who's in the G League Ignite. Crazy point guard. And then it's going to be Amen and Asar Thompson from Overtime Elite, who are actually, I'm going over to Europe to see them as well. They're playing in Spain and in Serbia in September. But they're 2 6'7", 6'8" twins that are, if one of them goes 3, the other one's going to go 4. So next year's draft is going to be insane in terms of generational type talent and also non-college players. What
are your thoughts on that kid? I can't even pronounce his name yet, but the Watanabe, I think.
No, Wembanyama.
I'm not even going to try that, but because I'm going to butcher it. But I see some stories that say 7'3", others say 7'5".
No, he's 7'3", 7'4", has a 7'9" wingspan. Shoots the ball better than any player in this draft class. You see him and he looks like a cheat code.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. It is.
It really is. It's shocking seeing this guy, because I don't know what we're going to expect from him, but it's probably going to be greatness, right? I mean,
yeah. You're going to see, by the time December rolls around, you're going to see about 10 teams that these mysterious injuries start to pop up out of nowhere. And their star players are not playing the second half of the season.
Oh, the tanks are rolling in. I love
it.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And again, you can follow her one more time on Twitter at Kristen Peake to follow her work, which is incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And tomorrow I'm going to be going on a fantasy basketball show, part of the Locked On Network, Josh Lloyd's show, which I'll republish here sort of as a crossover. But Kristen, thank you. Have a great day. Have fun in Europe.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks.